My daughter told me to pay rent or get out in the same kitchen where I taught her to count change, and I chose out, but not for me. Evan didn't blink when he added, or we change the locks, like a waiter offering dessert after an insult. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. It was Sunday, February 2nd, 2025, late winter in Albany Park, Chicago. Slush chewed the doormat, and a draft carried in car exhaust and lemon cleaner. I came with milk, oranges, and a loaf of rye because my grandson Aiden likes French toast stars. The house wore open house perfection. Unlit candles, shining quartz, a wall calendar hanging straight with Feb 10 underlined twice in blue. Lena, in the oversized sweater I bought her last Christmas, leaned on the sink like a manager, considering layoffs. Utilities, HOA, repairs. If you're staying in the garden unit, you contribute. By the 10th, my eyes drifted to the fridge. The $2,800 furnace control board invoice still taped there, my card, my signature, John 18. Under it, an electrician's $640 receipt curling at the corner. In the mail tray, a crumpled HOA delinquency, $1,260, half hidden beneath a takeout menu where a salad costs $18. On the counter, Lena's phone buzzed. Venmo, brunch, $142. She didn't flip it over. I didn't need to. Not personal, Dad, she said. It's just life. Everyone pays rent. Some of us already did, I said. The room smelled like onions starting to sweat, the exact scent of my wife's Sundays. For a blink, Lena was 8 again, standing on a chair counting quarters into a pickle jar for a field trip she thought I'd forget. I put the last 2 quarters in myself. We called it our magic jar. She called that childhood. I called it the down payment on this moment. Evan peeled back the can tab on his craft beer. We're just setting boundaries, he said, the way people say we when they mean me. I love boundaries, I told him. They keep roofs tight. The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was the kind grown children use to edit history in real time. I set the grocery bag down. My keys hung on the little ceramic hook shaped like a sparrow. My late wife bought it at a church fair, and I left them there, right where Lena could see them. Then I reached above the fridge, past old birthday magnets, and slid down a plastic sleeve I'd laminated the week after the funeral. My deed copy. I folded it once and put it in my coat pocket against the spot over my ribs that hurts when the weather changes. I stepped to the calendar and took a photo. February 10, circled like a dare. Snowmelt ticked off the porch railing, a metronome for bad decisions. Outside, salt cracked under my boots. A bus sighed down Lawrence, faces turned forward with that winter look that says, keep moving or freeze. When I reached the door, Evan said, so, rent or out? Out, I said, opening the door. Just not for me. On the porch, I let the cold hit me full in the face, the clean kind that burns. In that burn, I counted what people never see. $18,400 since June in temporary utilities and repairs. Receipts lined up in my head like soldiers. Every receipt was my pension. Every favor was interest they never intended to pay. 3 decisions arranged themselves like tools on a bench. I would not raise my voice. I would raise the stakes. I would not beg to belong. I would own what I already owned, and I would not sleep on the story. I would count it day by day. The door closed softly behind me. The cold said, then do it. Silence can be louder than a slap when it lands in your chest. That night, I drove to my small sublet on Kimball Avenue, the kind of place where heat hums like a tired animal in the walls and the fridge clicks every few minutes, reminding you you're still awake. The bag of groceries from earlier sat untouched on the passenger seat, the milk sweating through its plastic, the oranges rolling loose with every turn. I carried them inside anyway. I hate waste. I lined up receipts on the laminate table like soldiers. $2,800 for the furnace board, $640 for the breaker swap, $385 for the plumber's snake, a dozen smaller slips for sealant insulation paint. Little paper witnesses of everything I'd kept working when no one else noticed. Every receipt was my pension, my insurance, my proof. My hands shook when I reached the end of the line. I pressed play on my old flip phone. Her voice filled the room, Lena's voice, flat, administrative. "If you want to stay here, Dad, we need rent by the 10th. Evan's tone followed, smirking even through a recording. "We're not running a charity." Then my own voice, smaller, breaking, "It's my house." That silence after, it was the sound of something permanent cracking. I closed the phone, set it down like it could burn me. There are wounds only adult children can inflict. They know the exact places you've gone soft. I stared at a photo of my wife pinned to the wall by a thumbtack, her holding a brass key, the day we signed the mortgage in 2012. I'd promised her, "I'll keep the roof tight." I did. They just built their selfishness under it. The city outside was half asleep, headlights smearing through snow. I opened my laptop and pulled up the Cook County Recorder's office site. Deed history, my name alone, no liens, no co-ownership, just me. The words glowed like they were waiting to be remembered. I whispered them out loud. No lien. My name. The room didn't echo. It agreed. At 2:14 a.m., February 3rd, my email pinged with the bank payoff letter for the HELOC I'd finally killed in January. Balance. 0.0. Account closed. My chest felt tight, not from sadness this time, but from clarity. I printed the letter, slid it under my palm, and for the first time in months, my heartbeat matched something steady when I closed my eyes. I saw the house again. The front steps I rebuilt after Lena said she didn't have time. The smell of wet concrete from that summer when Evan couldn't be bothered to hold the railing while it set. I'd believed in patience as a kind of love. Now it just looked like unpaid labor. I didn't sleep much. 2 hours maybe. When I woke, dawn had stained the blinds copper. I brewed coffee, no cream, no sugar, same as always, and pulled an old envelope from the drawer. On the back I wrote a list in black pen. 1. Call Marta, legal aid. 2. Call Denise, realtor. 3. Call Calder, HOA. For change lock codes. Then below that one more line. Don't cry. Count. I folded the list and tucked it under my phone. Outside, a delivery truck idled, exhaust curling into the brittle morning. I thought of Lena's phrase, "It's just life, Dad." Funny how people say life when they mean self-interest. Life isn't cruel. It's arithmetic. You give, they take, until you start adding again. I went to the window. Snowmelt ran in slow rivers down the curb, washing away yesterday's footprints. For the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt awake. There's a strange relief in realizing the people you love can't bankrupt you anymore. You simply stop loaning them the parts of yourself they keep spending. I poured my coffee, looked down at my wife's photo and said softly, "Roof's still tight, love. But maybe it's time someone else lived under it. Tomorrow, I'd start making calls." Tonight, I let the silence settle. Not as punishment, but as planning. The kind of silence that prepares its own echo. If they wanted rent, I'd show them what ownership looked like. Monday, February 3rd, 9:05 a.m. I dialed Marta from Legal Aid. I'd met her years ago through a retirees' workshop on elder housing rights. She remembered me immediately. "Garden unit occupancy? Family tenants?" she asked, already typing. "Family," I said. "No lease, no rent. I covered repairs and utilities." "Then it's simple," she replied. "The title's in your name. You have every right to sell. Just handle it by the book. 48-hour written notice before showings, possession delivered per contract, no self-help evictions." "Lawful," I repeated. That word landed like an anchor. No shouting, no cruelty, just procedure. Revenge as paperwork. After hanging up, I stood by the window watching an early delivery truck spray grey slush against the curb. In that spray, I saw 20 years of temporary help, short-term stays. "We'll pay you back after tax season." Every excuse under the Chicago sun. I wasn't a landlord. I was an unpaid caretaker of their comfort. That would end now. At 11:30, I met Denise, my realtor friend, at the corner bakery on Montrose. She'd helped me refinance after my wife passed. She owed me a favor, but she didn't know it yet. She slid a folder across the table. "2 flats in your block are moving fast. Between $812,000 and $845,000, depending on condition. Want to list Friday?" I took a bite of a stale muffin, chewed, and said, "List Friday." Weather's warming Saturday. People like open houses when they can keep their coats unzipped. Denise grinned. Still the planner. Still the owner, I said, signing the listing agreement effective Feb 6. The pen scratched like justice. At 1:10 p.m., I dropped by Mr. Calder's office. He was the HOA treasurer, a slow-talking man who always smelled faintly of paper and pipe smoke. "And they're behind 1,260 on dues," he said, handing me a ledger sheet. "But you've been paying shared repairs since last June." He tapped one entry, roof reseal 2,200, paid by J. Greer. "Good bones," Calder said. "Bad budgeting on their end," I nodded. "That'll change soon." I left his office with the ledger folded neatly in my pocket. Proof, again. You don't need to yell when your evidence whispers for you. By 5:40, I was back at my sublet, drafting a 48-hour access email to Lena and Evan. Subject, property showings notice, Feb 8. Please note, the property at address will have showings on Saturday, Feb 8, between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. I will accompany. 48-hour notice provided. JG, I reread it twice. No malice, just fact. Like a weather report, inevitable, neutral, correct. I attached a sample proof of funds letter Denise had given me so they'd see how serious buyers talk. A quiet education. The reply came fast. "You're not selling our house." "Sir, that 3-letter parasite." I didn't answer. Silence is the most powerful paragraph you'll ever write. That evening I walked the block, boots crunching thin ice. The neighborhood glowed amber in the streetlights. Brick 2 flats with porch swings, a few for sale signs leaning against the wind. Mrs. Patel, my neighbor, waved from her stoop. She's the kind who notices everything. "You're walking like a man with a plan," she said. "Maybe I am," I smiled. She laughed softly. "Good, about time." Back home, I pulled up her doorbell footage she'd once shared, a midnight clip from January 22nd. Lena and Evan arguing on the porch, a cigarette glowing in the dark. Evan kicking snow off his shoes, muttering, "He'll cave." He always does, not this time. I saved the clip on a flash drive and labeled it, "Pattern." Not evidence for court, evidence for memory. Before bed, I opened my email drafts, reread the listing agreement. The ledger, the access notice. All lawful, all aligned. Then I picked up the laminated deed from my nightstand and photographed it with my phone, sending it to myself with a single caption. I built this. When I set my phone down, I noticed the hum of the fridge again. It wasn't noise, it was rhythm. The sound of something old still working. I'd thought of my wife's brass key, the one I keep in my wallet, and I knew she'd approve. She'd always said revenge was just responsibility with better timing. Tomorrow I'd start moving pieces. Tonight I just breathed, steady and deliberate, the way you do when you're laying a foundation, because planning isn't cruelty. It's clarity. Revenge isn't a scream. It's a schedule. Thursday, February 6th. Chicago's sky looked like wet metal, grey, dented, waiting to buckle. Denise met me at the house, with her camera bag slung over one shoulder and a measuring tape in her hand. "You ready?" she asked, boots squeaking on the porch. "As I'll ever be," I said, unlocking the door with the calm of a man who's already let go. Inside, the air smelled like lemon polish and tension. Lena was out. Evan's shoes were still by the door, designer leather glistening with salt stains. Denise unspooled her tape and started noting dimensions while I sorted papers on the dining table. The $2,800 furnace invoice, the $640 electrical receipt, the roof warranty, the HOA payment confirmation. Each one a chapter in a story I'd written with my wallet. "These are your upgrades?" she asked. I nodded. "Proof of maintenance, proof of ownership, proof I'm not bluffing." She smiled faintly. "Buyers love receipts. They hate surprises." "Then we'll give them both," I said. At 2 p.m., I sent a short, crisp email to Lena and Evan, per the listing. "Showings will take place Saturday, Feb 8, 10 a.m., 2 p.m. I'll accompany. 48-hour notice as required." J. Greer signed it with my full name. It looked colder that way, professional, detached. Like a line drawn in concrete, no reply, good. Silence meant they were stewing. And stewing people make mistakes. By 4:15, I was sitting across from Mr. Tran, the locksmith. He'd been in the neighborhood for decades. The kind of man who knew which families lost keys and which lost trust. "Smart lock system?" he asked, scrolling through my app data on his laptop. "Model LX12, synced with Evan's phone," I said. "Can you pull the history?" He nodded, fingers tapping quick. "Code shared with 4 devices. Evan, Lena, a user named Jenna, and one labeled Dogwalker. Last code change was December 12th. "Change it again," I said. "But schedule it for Sunday, Feb 9, 8:10 a.m., after the showings, not before." Tran looked up. "Trouble?" "No resolution." He shrugged, typed, and printed the confirmation. "Done. You'll get an email when it updates. Lawful, clean." I'd played by their rules, only this time I'd read the fine print. On my way home, I stopped by a hardware store and bought 2 doormats. One said welcome, the other said not today. Both felt honest in their own way. That evening, I returned to my small sublet and laid everything out on the table. Deed copy, receipts, HOA ledger, listing draft, trans invoice. The paper spread like a blueprint of quiet retribution. I took out a manila folder and labeled it "Closing" in block letters. Inside it, I placed 1 deed copy, the bank payoff letter from Feb, 3 Denise's listing agreement, Marta's printed email summary of possession laws. When I wrote the word "closing," I didn't just mean escrow. I meant an ending I could live with. I poured myself a cup of weak tea, the kind that tastes like discipline, and sat at the small table staring at my wife's photo on the fridge. She was holding that same brass key, smiling like she could see 10 years ahead and forgive all of it. I whispered, "I'm not throwing anyone out. I'm just walking out with what's mine." By 9:30 p.m., I'd packed a small box labeled personal tools. Hammer, screwdriver, wrench set, duct tape. Not because I needed them, but because tools remind me of who I am. A man who fixes things quietly until he can't anymore. Before bed, I set my alarm for 6 a.m. and placed my phone face down beside me. Revenge doesn't need adrenaline. It needs a steady hand. When I turned off the light, the room hummed, fridge, radiator, heartbeat, all at the same rhythm. Tomorrow the stages would arrive. Saturday, the buyers. Sunday, the locks. I fell asleep thinking of the "not today" mat, rolled in its plastic, waiting by the door like a prophecy. They thought the listing photos were a bluff, until the stagers rolled in with furniture pads and a camera crew. Friday, February 7th, 10:20 a.m., the doorbell chimed. 2 women in dark coats stepped inside with their equipment, talking about lighting balance and visual flow. The house that once smelled like Sunday onions now smelled like professionalism, clean, cold, detached. Denise followed them in, clipboard under her arm. "Let's make it shine," she said. Lena appeared at the top of the stairs in pajamas, her hair tied up in a knot that looked more defensive than casual. "What the hell is this?" she snapped. "Photography," Denise said simply, pointing toward the camera on its tripod. "Listing goes live today at 3. Lena crossed her arms. "You can't list our house." I looked up from where I was smoothing the kitchen counter. "Our?" I asked, almost curious. Then I reached into my coat pocket and slid a paper across the table. The 2012 deed. My name, my wife's name, no one else. "Showings tomorrow." "Please keep the place presentable." Evans stormed in a few minutes later, phone in hand. "You're making a mistake, old man. You can't just throw us out. You'll regret this," I shrugged. "I'm not throwing anyone out. I'm moving myself on." The photographer's flash went off, twice, then again. Clicks filled the silence where argument used to live. By 12:40, the HOA emailed me another final notice for dues, 1,260. I forwarded it with my payment confirmation attached and a note that read, "Covered again. Ledger clear." I wasn't doing them a favor. I was clearing my name. A paid ledger sells faster than a messy one. At 3 p.m., Denise called from her office. "We already have interest. 2 cash buyers want early viewing before the weekend rush. You good with 9:30 a.m. and 10:15? "Perfect," I said. "Bring the furnace invoice and roof warranty. You've got a solid story here." "Oh," I said. I've got more than a story. The MLS listing went live at 3:27 p.m. Sharp sun splash 2 flat in Albany Park. Legal garden unit. Updated mechanicals, newer roof 23. Asking $829,000 by 4:05. My phone buzzed. Lena. A screenshot of the listing with the caption, "What is this?" Then another from Evan. "You can't sell our house." I sent one message back, just a photo of the deed. No caption. Silence is a language when truth is printed in bold. By 6:09 p.m., the kitchen lights went dark. I knew that silence too. They were unplugging emotions. Then came the texts that weren't about money. They were about control. Lena, if you do this, you'll never see Aiden again. Evan, we'll sue you. You're too old to handle this. The words didn't sting. They confirmed what I already knew. Their love was conditional, indexed to convenience. I forwarded both messages to Marta, who replied within minutes. Document threats. Do not engage. You're fully compliant under Illinois property law. Then she added one line that I read twice. You're not being cruel. You're being consistent. At 7:55 p.m., I took my usual walk around the alley. The air was sharp, the kind that makes your breath sound like glass breaking. The house glowed from the inside. Warm light behind the curtains, laughter from Aiden's TV show echoing faintly through the vents. For a second, I almost turned back. Almost. I looked up at the roof I'd retarred myself in 2023, felt the ache in my right shoulder where the ladder bit into bone. That roof had no idea it sheltered people who planned my exile. I chuckled low. Only a house, I whispered. Only everything. Before heading back to my sublet, I placed the welcome mat neatly on the porch and slid the "Not Today" one behind the planter out of sight. 2 versions of the same greeting. Back home, I made a pot of tea, turned off the lights, and stared at the phone vibrating with unread texts. Every vibration was another small test. Would I answer? Would I explain? Would I cave? I didn't. The clock ticked past midnight. The showings were less than 10 hours away. They thought I was bluffing. But revenge doesn't need volume. It just needs proof of funds. Tomorrow, I'd have both. The first buyer brought coffee. The second brought proof of funds. By noon, both brought truth. Saturday, February 8th. The morning light came thin and grey through the blinds, the kind of February light that doesn't warm. It just reveals. I arrived at the house early, 9 a.m., before anyone else. The porch creaked under my boots. The welcome mat was damp with melted frost. I brushed it off and whispered, "Let's make today count." At 9:28, Denise pulled up in her navy SUV. "They're serious, both of them," she said, flipping through her folder. "Angela's first. She's bringing her contractor. Second's a man named Shankar, quiet type, all cash." She glanced up at the windows. "You sure you're ready for this?" "I've been ready since 2012, I said, gripping the folder that held my furnace invoice, roof warranty, and HOA ledger. My paperwork was my armor. 30 a.m. Angela arrived in a tailored navy coat, gloves tucked in her pocket, holding 2 coffees. "1 cream, 1 black, she said with a small smile. "Guess right?" "Black," I said, accepting it. The warmth hit my palm like trust. Inside, she walked through each room with calm precision, touching the banister, peering at the furnace, checking the outlets with her contractor. "Solid bones," he murmured. She nodded approvingly. "Parents moving closer to the city," she explained. "We want a place that feels taken care of." Denise looked at me. I said quietly, "Everything here has been taken care of, just not everyone." Angela studied the kitchen tile, eyes narrowing. "You did this work yourself?" "Most of it," I said. "Every grout line's a Saturday I could have spent fishing." She smiled, soft but professional. "That's worth more than people think." They left at 9:57. I watched her drive away, coffee steam ghosting through the windshield. 10:05 a.m. Shankar arrived, slim, quiet, early 40s. He shook my hand with a nod. "I won't waste your time," he said, pulling out a wire confirmation printout. 900,000 in cash parked for acquisitions. I can close in 4 business days. I'd spent 40 years reading people's eyes. His told the truth. He toured quickly, asking about utility bills and roof insulation. I handed him the HOA ledger and the furnace warranty like a man handing over confession documents. All paid, all up to code. When we came back upstairs, he said simply, "I'll make an offer today." Before he could leave, the air cracked open. Lena stormed down the hall in slippers and a sweatshirt, voice sharp as sleet. "You can't show without my permission." Denise froze mid-step but didn't blink. "We provided 48-hour notice, ma'am. Everything's lawful." Evan appeared behind her, hair wild, eyes bloodshot. "Get out of our house," he shouted. "Our?" I said again, calm as a Sunday sermon. Still that word. Angela's contractor turned toward Denise, uneasy. Denise didn't move. "Let's finish the showing," she said, tone steady. Lena's eyes burned. "You're humiliating us." "No," I said softly. "You did that yourself when you told me to pay rent." The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. Even Evan didn't know where to put his hands. At 10:35, Shankar shook my hand again. "Expect my offer this afternoon." He gave Evan a polite nod that said, "I don't negotiate with noise." When they left, Lena stood in the doorway, voice low now. "Dad, you can't just—" "Sell everything." "I'm not selling everything," I said. "Just what I already paid for." She didn't answer, only stared as I packed my folder. By 11:45, Denise's phone buzzed, once, twice, 3 times. She turned the screen to me. "2 offers, both over asking." Angela, $840,000 cash, no appraisal, flexible possession. Shankar, $835,000 cash, 4-day close, no contingencies. The number glowed on the screen like something divine and cruel. "Pick one," she said quietly. I walked outside. The air was biting cold, every exhale a small cloud. Across the street, Mrs. Patel was sweeping salt off her steps. She raised her hand and I nodded back. Inside my coat pocket, my thumb brushed the corner of my wife's old brass key. From the porch, I could see the "Not Today" mat peeking behind the planter, hidden but ready. "Angela," I said finally. "Full price, all cash." Denise smiled. "Good choice." Back inside, she spread the documents on the kitchen island like a card dealer. "Let's counter at $840,000, earnest $25,000. Closing February 12th, possession to buyer at close." "You sure about the relocation stipend?" "Yes," I said. $3,000 if keys returned by Feb 11, 6 p.m. I'm not heartless. "Just finished." Denise clicked the pen and handed it to me. The sound was tiny, final, like a lock turning. I signed. 12:12 p.m. The moment the first buyer's phone buzzed, confirming acceptance. We both stood there for a second, listening to the hum of the fridge. The distant whoosh of traffic. "Feels strange, doesn't it?" she said. "Like walking off a job site after the last pole's wired," I said. "Quiet but proud," she smiled. "Angela's wiring the earnest money this afternoon. We'll meet at Lakeview Title on the 12th. Don't answer any more texts from them, okay?" I nodded, but my phone was already buzzing in my pocket. "Lena, you're destroying your family for money." "Evan, we'll have you declared incompetent." "Just wait." I let the screen go dark. "You hear that?" I asked Denise. She looked around, confused. "What?" "Peace," I said. As she packed her briefcase, church bells rang from a few blocks away. 12 notes for noon. I counted each one. When they stopped, I felt something loosen in my chest, a tension I'd been mistaking for love. At 12:25, Angela texted confirmation. "Offer accepted. Wire sent. See you at closing." I replied simply, "See you Wednesday." "Bring a pen." Then I stepped onto the porch, placed the "Not Today" mat front and center, and closed the door behind me. For the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel like mine. And that was exactly the point. I didn't need to live there anymore. I just needed it to remember who it really belonged to. Contracts aren't threats. They're clocks that start ticking. Sunday, February 9th, 8:10 a.m. The city was half asleep when Mr. Tran arrived in his grey van. The locksmith's breath came out in puffs as he set his tool case down. "Code change scheduled," he said. "Want me to hit confirm?" "Do it," I told him. He tapped a small tablet. A digital chirp, soft as a heartbeat, echoed from inside the door. "Done. Email confirmation sent." I watched him drive away while the cold air bit at my face. The sky above Albany Park was clear for once, light like clean glass. I checked my phone. 8:13 a.m., time to start the countdown. I typed the message to Lena and Evan with deliberate precision, every word a hammer on a nail, contract executed. Closing scheduled Feb 12, $10 a.m. at Lakeview Title. Buyer requests possession at close. $3,000 available upon key return by Feb 11, 6 p.m. There will be no lockout. Keys to be surrendered at closing. Buyer's final walkthrough Feb 11, 4 p.m. I read it twice, added regards, J. Greer, and hit send. 1 minute later, my phone vibrated. Lena, monster. Evan, illegal. You can't sell without our consent. Marta's reply came next, short and sharp like a legal gavel. You've complied with Illinois law in full. Let them bark. Paperwork is your shield. I smiled for the first time that morning. By 2:30 p.m., I was in Mr. Calder's HOA office, the smell of toner and coffee thick in the air. He slid a cream-colored envelope across the desk. All dues cleared, he said. I'll confirm via community email Monday morning. Looks better for your buyer that way. Thank you, I said, tucking the envelope into my folder labeled closing. Everything clean before we sign. He adjusted his glasses, gave me a small nod. I've seen people lose homes to chaos. You're selling yours to order. That's rarer than it should be. Walking out, I passed the house again. Through the front window, I saw Aiden's toy cars lined up along the sill, bright red and blue against the dull winter light. My throat tightened. I almost went to knock, but stopped. Not today. That evening. I packed 3 boxes from the garden unit, labeled in my neat block handwriting, tool belt and hardware photo albums, 1980-2012, kitchen essentials. I stacked them beside the door. The only sound in the room was the faint hum of the refrigerator, steady, loyal, predictable. I'd miss that kind of honesty. At 8:48 p.m., my phone buzzed with a voicemail. I pressed play. Lena's voice, trembling. Dad, please. Aiden's bedtime is here. Don't take his room away. We'll fix this, just don't do this. I sat at the small table, thumb pressed against the wood until it hurt. The voicemail played twice. Then I hit save. Not delete, save. Evidence isn't only for courts. It's for clarity. The next message came from Evan, louder, sloppier. You think this is over? You'll regret making us look stupid. You'll see. I didn't respond. Every minute they raged was another minute the contract aged into permanence. I poured myself a glass of water, took a slow sip, and wrote a small check to myself from my savings account for $1,250, first month's rent at my new place in Ravenswood. I folded it neatly into an envelope and placed it under my keys on the counter. Practical Revenge has a budget line. When I looked up, the house felt smaller than before, like it knew its time was running out. I took one last walk through the hall. The family photos I'd hung still lined the wall, my wife's face smiling from behind glass. I touched the frame gently. You'd have told me to sell sooner, I whispered. At 9:32 p.m., a text pinged from Marta. Funds verified. Title company confirmed appointment. Bring ID, deed copy, and voided check for wire. See you Wednesday morning. Under it, she added a quote I didn't recognize. Peace is what happens when you stop arguing with fairness. I looked at that line for a long time before replying, understood. Thank you. Before bed, I opened the smart lock app on my phone. The new access log showed only one active user, me. Evan's code, disabled. Lena's expired. Jenna the bestie, removed. For the first time since I'd bought that house in 2012. The locks matched the truth. I turned off the light, and the room dipped into silence, deep, earned silence. The kind that doesn't ask for applause. Tomorrow I'd drop the boxes off at storage, print the settlement documents, and prepare for the closing. The house had 12 years of my fingerprints. In 3 days, it would only have my signature, and that was justice enough. Justice doesn't always arrive in a courtroom. Sometimes it walks into a conference room, wears a winter coat, and carries coffee in a paper cup. Wednesday, February 12, 9:58 a.m., Lakeview Title, Room B. The office smelled like toner, burnt coffee and lemon sanitizer. A long table divided the room. On one end sat Angela, the buyer, with her banker and her file of transfer papers neatly stacked. Denise sat beside me, steady as always. Across the table, Marta reviewed the settlement statement line by line, pen tapping once every few seconds. The rhythm was calm, almost like a clock announcing that the end was near. Total sale, $840,000. Earnest, $25,000 received. Net to seller after fees and taxes, $828,400. Marta looked up. Satisfied, Mr. Greer? I nodded. More than. I placed my palm on the stack of documents. My hand didn't tremble. Not this time. 9 a.m. The glass door banged open. Lena and Evan stumbled in, windburned and out of breath. Evan still had snow on his shoulders. Lena's eyes were red and wild. "You can't do this," she shouted. "You can't just—" Angela's banker looked up, startled. The closer, a woman with perfect posture, adjusted her glasses but said nothing. Evan pointed at me. "He's being manipulated. He's not of sound mind." Marta didn't even flinch. "Sir, this is a fully executed contract signed voluntarily on February 8th. Possession transfers today upon funding." "Funding?" He barked. "We live there." Denise spoke before I could. "Correction, you occupied. That occupancy ended legally the moment this transaction closed. You were given written notice, relocation stipend included, which you declined." She slid a single sheet across the table, the $3,000 courtesy stipend acknowledgement, signature line blank. "Had you returned keys by Feb 11 at 6 p.m., this would have been yours." Lena's voice cracked. "You'd pay us to leave our own home?" I met her eyes. "Not your home, Lena, just your house. I'm keeping my dignity. You can keep your story." For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Even the printer seemed to hold its breath. Then the closer said briskly, "Let's finish the documents, shall we?" Marta turned a page. "Deed conveyance, sign here." I picked up the pen. It clicked once, loud in the silence. I signed John Greer, slow, deliberate. The paper soaked in the ink like it understood me. Angela smiled softly. "Congratulations, Mr. Greer. I'll take good care of it." I believed her. Her tone carried no triumph, only respect. Evan lunged forward suddenly, reaching for the keys lying near the folder. The closer reacted first, one hand firm over them. "Sir, those are no longer your concern." Marta stood too. "Touch anything on this table, and we call building security." He froze. The moment stretched thin, humming like a power line in wind. Finally, he dropped his arm. Lena's voice came smaller now. "You're choosing money over family." I exhaled. "No, sweetheart. I'm choosing peace over chaos. There's a difference." At 10:23, Angela's banker cleared his throat. "Funds sent." The closer hit print, the machine whirred. Spitting out the confirmation page, "Wire initiated 10:29 a.m. The faint warmth from the paper touched my fingertips. Denise smiled. "And just like that, it's official." Marta extended her hand. "Congratulations, Mr. Greer. You're free." I stood, shook her hand and looked around one last time. Evan was pacing like a man in a cage made of his own arrogance. Lena sat in the corner, head down, shoulders shaking, not rage now, but realization. I picked up the key ring, 3 silver keys, smooth with use. My wife's key had always been the smallest. I'd kept that one. On my way out, Lena whispered, "You'll regret this." I paused in the doorway, turned slightly. "No, I regret raising a daughter who thought rent was the same as respect." Her mouth opened, but nothing came. Words only hurt when they're true. The hallway outside smelled faintly of copier ink and disinfectant. I walked slow, breathing steady. The elevator dinged open, empty. I stepped in, pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors slid shut, I caught my reflection in the brushed steel, older maybe, but lighter somehow. Downstairs, the winter sun hit the windows hard enough to make them glare white. I stood just inside the revolving door, pulled out my phone. 11:14 a.m., wire received. A 7-figure notification glowed across the screen. I felt no greed, only gravity. That money wasn't a reward. It was closure given a dollar amount. Outside, Chicago's wind wrapped around me, clean and cold. Across the street, a man in a suit was feeding quarters into a parking meter. I almost laughed. Funny how we all pay for time one way or another. Denise joined me on the sidewalk, pulling her coat tighter. I've done hundreds of closings, she said, but that one, that felt different. Different how? Like justice disguised as paperwork. I smiled. That's the best kind. She handed me an envelope. Copy of the wire receipt and closing packet. Keep it safe. Already safe, I said, patting my chest pocket. Marta came out behind her, holding her phone up. I'll email you the legal confirmation by noon, she said. You did it by the book, John. They have no recourse. I nodded. Good. I'm too old for courtrooms. Paperwork is enough punishment. As they walked away, I stood there a minute longer watching the reflection of sunlight ripple on the glass doors. Somewhere above me a church bell rang 11 times. Each toll felt like a receipt being stamped, paid in full. I reached into my coat pocket and felt the cool curve of my wife's brass key, the one I'd kept through everything. It wasn't for a door anymore. It was for memory. I walked toward the parking lot, the wind pushing at my back. Behind me, the title office doors whooshed shut. Ahead, the street stretched open, clean, unclaimed. Halfway to my car, my phone buzzed. A new text from Lena. You'll always be alone now. I stared at it a moment. Then typed back, maybe. But I'll be free. I hit send, slipped the phone back in my pocket, and kept walking. For the first time in 12 years, I didn't look back at that house, not even once. When the money hit, the first thing I bought wasn't a car, or a suit, or anything you could post on social media. I bought silence. The routine AM, February 12th. My phone buzzed with the confirmation. Wire received, $820-$8,400. No fireworks. No champagne. Just a blinking number that meant I was finally done begging to be respected in my own house. I walked out of Lakeview Title, crossed the street to the corner cafe, and bought a black coffee, $2.50. I paid in cash. The wind outside tasted cleaner that morning. I leaned against the window, cup warming my hands, and watched the city move, delivery trucks rumbling by, strangers talking into their earbuds, a man scraping frost off his windshield. The world didn't know I'd just traded history for peace, and maybe that was perfect. I pulled out my phone and wrote one final text to Lena. I love you. I won't fund disrespect. When you're ready to talk about responsibility, I'm here. I've left the $3,000 stipend in escrow for 14 days. After that, talked to Marta. I reread it twice. No anger, no pleading, just the truth, wrapped in civility. I hit send and felt something uncoil in my chest that had been tight for years. By late afternoon, I'd signed a short lease on a small one-bedroom in Ravenswood, south-facing windows, an old radiator that hissed like a loyal cat, and hardwood floors that creaked politely underfoot. The landlord, a man named Carl, handed me the keys. Month to month, okay? Perfect, I said. Freedom should always be renewable. That night, I unpacked what little I'd brought. 3 boxes, a coffee maker, and the cast-iron skillet my wife seasoned the first year we were married. It was scratched, heavy, honest. I cooked 2 eggs in it, watching the yolks bubble gold. The sound was soft, almost kind. After dinner, I hung my wife's brass key on a small nail by the front door. It caught the lamplight like it was remembering something. We did it, I told her picture, now resting on the windowsill beside the coffee cup. We kept the roof tight, even if it's a different roof. The apartment was quiet, but not empty. I realized that quiet and loneliness aren't the same thing. Quiet is what happens when the noise finally leaves. Around 9 p.m., I opened my notebook and made a new list, not like the ones before, filled with bills and to-dos, but a different kind. Things I won't do anymore, explain my worth, pay for other people's comfort, mistake patience for love, confuse silence with surrender. I looked at that last one for a long time. Then I crossed it out and rewrote it. Silence is not surrender, it's strategy. Later, I sat by the window, watching flakes of snow start to drift again over the streetlights. The city hummed far away, the sound of a life that didn't owe me anything anymore. I thought of my father, how in 1978 he refused to co-sign my brother's loan. We'd called him cruel for it. Years later, when the bank took my brother's truck, I finally understood. Boundaries aren't cold. They're clean. I took another sip of coffee, cold now, and whispered to the dark glass, revenge isn't about winning. It's about ending. Outside, a train horn echoed faintly down the Ravenswood tracks, steady, distant, gone. Entitlement leaves a paper trail. So does accountability. February 14th. 2 mornings after closing, my inbox chimed with a community-wide email from the HOA. Subject line, "Welcome new homeowners, Angela and family." Below that, a polite paragraph thanked the previous owner for promptly settling all arrears and completing recent roof and furnace upgrades. I smiled. Those words, previous owner, felt like freedom signed in ink. I forwarded the message to Lena with no note. None was needed. By mid-morning, Denise texted me a photo. Angela and her parents standing on the porch, mittened hands around mugs of coffee, smiling beside the welcome mat I'd left behind. Beneath the image, she'd typed, "Looks like they're home." I typed back, "Good bones deserve good people." On my desk, still rolled tight, the "Not Today" mat waited for its turn. The next envelope through my new mailbox was a thin one from Evan's so-called attorney. 4 pages of bluster, wrongful transfer, undue influence. We demand immediate reversal. I sent it to Marta with a 1-line email. Handle this professionally, as always. Her reply came 15 minutes later, responded in 3 sentences. Quoted statute. No further contact expected. Then a smiley face. Lawyers don't often use those. That afternoon, I took a walk to Mrs. Patel's place to return the USB drive with the doorbell footage she'd lent me. She answered the door in her gardening gloves, even though the ground was still frozen. So, how did it go? All done, I said. She poured us chai that smelled of cardamom and finality. You taught them something, she said. I didn't mean to teach, I replied. Just stopped financing their lessons, she smiled. Boundaries teach people how to love you. I raised the cup. Then maybe they'll learn. Back home, I opened a small folder labeled Future. Inside, the wire receipt, my new lease, and a single U.S. savings bond for $500, purchased that morning in Aiden's name. It was dated February 14th, a quiet Valentine to the next generation. I didn't tell Lena about it, not yet. Love doesn't need applause to be real. At my kitchen table, I reviewed the math, because numbers calm me, the way some people pray. $840,000 sale price, $11,600 closing costs. Uskeduy's $828,400 net, $5,200 first-year living expenses and moving costs. $823,200 remaining. I divided it neatly into 3 columns on a notepad, CD. Ladder 4.6%, 400,000 money market emergency, 250,000 investment account, 173,200. Every dollar had a destination. Every receipt had a reason. For the first time in decades, my finances were silent, no arguments attached. Around sunset, I stepped out onto my new balcony. Below me, Ravenswood glowed with the dull amber of street lamps. Somewhere a couple argued faintly over parking. A siren passed, fading fast. I took a deep breath and let the air burn clean through my lungs. I thought about the house on Albany Park, not with bitterness, but with precision. I could see Angela's curtains already drawn, a new light fixture maybe, laughter that didn't cost me anything. The neighborhood had gained a better story than the one I left behind. At 8:10 p.m., I turned on the radio and let an old Sinatra song fill the room. That's life. Halfway through, I laughed quietly. The lyric hit me different now. Riding high in April, shot down in May. I'd been both, but now I was steady in February. Before bed, I opened my notebook again and wrote one last line under my previous list. Peace requires maintenance. 2. Then I closed it, turned off the lamp, and slept a full 8 hours. Not the restless kind, the earned kind. A week after closing, the house spoke to me, without saying a word. February 19th. The snow had started to melt in uneven patches, leaving salt streaks like scars on the sidewalks. I wasn't planning to walk by the old house, but my feet took me there anyway. Habit, I suppose. Some roads don't forget you even when you're done with them. From half a block away, I saw the difference. The curtains were new, cream, soft. The porch lights glowed steady, not flickering like they used to when Evan forgot to change the bulb. The welcome mat I'd left behind was still there, edges curling slightly in the thaw, and there he was, Angela's father, out front with a small toolbox, oiling the squeaky gate hinge that had haunted me for years. He bent, worked it loose, tested it twice until it swung silently. "Good bones," he said when he saw me watching from the sidewalk. His voice had that same easy pride I used to have. "Yeah," I said, smiling. "She'll take care of you back." He tipped his cap, and that was enough. No questions, no history. Just two men who knew what it meant to keep something standing. I turned to leave when my phone buzzed. "Lena, Dad, we're looking at apartments. Can you co-sign?" I stopped under a bare maple tree, the kind that rattles even without wind. I read the message 3 times. My breath came out in a small fog that disappeared too quickly. I typed, deleted, retyped. Finally, I sent, "No cosign. I'll pay your first application fee. And I'll babysit when asked, never as leverage." For a minute, nothing. Then 3 dots appeared, blinked, and vanished. I slipped the phone into my coat pocket and kept walking. Ahead of me, the street opened like a clean page. I thought of my wife in 2012, handing me that brass key with her signature half-smile. "It's not just a house," she'd said. "It's proof we made it." She was right. We did make it, just not the way I imagined. As I turned onto Montrose, the winter sun caught in the shop windows, throwing slanted gold light across the pavement. I passed a thrift store, a bakery, a bus stop full of tired faces going somewhere they'd rather not be. Ordinary life still moving. When I reached my new building, I paused by the door and unrolled the "Not Today" mat. I placed it outside, pressed it flat with my shoe. The words looked cleaner here, honest, earned. Inside, I hung my coat, brewed coffee, and sat by the window. Steam fogged the glass, blurring the city. Somewhere in the distance, a train wailed, a low, familiar sound that didn't ache anymore. I thought about Aidan, about the $500 bond tucked in that folder marked future. Maybe one day he'd find it. Maybe he'd learn that love without accountability isn't love. It's debt. I raised the coffee cup to the quiet and said what I wish someone had told me years ago. "You didn't lose me. You gave me away when you mistook generosity for obligation." The radiator hissed softly, like applause from a ghost. And just like that, the story ended, not with revenge, but with restoration.